actually used to be in the army and used to actually like help with the war planning and shit. When I got out, it was something that was so second nature to me that as I was playing Battlegrounds, I was kind of doing it there.
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
Well, I actually go by many names. Here I go by Robot T-Rex, but on TikTok I'm Stagnant. I've been playing, man, probably since middle school, back in like 2005. That was when I first picked it up, and I was playing on a potato. But yeah, I ended up picking up the game again in high school. So it was probably like 2007, and my buddies were playing. They were two brothers, and these dudes ended up introducing me to the game. I started playing as a troll hunter because it was pretty cool. Obviously, I still main a hunter, but Goblin is the master race. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I'm from Vegas, so I was going to UNLV, which is primarily like a fighting game kind of place. Vegas is. So I was playing a lot of fighting games at the time and was divvying my attention between the two, but Wrath was great. So I kind of got addicted and just kept playing. And then the rest is history. That's how I'm here now. But then Cataclysm happened, Goblins came out. I never went back. Goblins are the way to go. But yeah, that's pretty much my story in a nutshell. I decided that I'd like to get into content creation because a lot of people are a little too salty. So I want to make it fun again. Actually, when I first started playing, I stayed pretty much only in Kalimdor because at the time I was on Spirestone. That server was brutal. It was like 60-40 Alliance and Horde. So pretty much any time that I went to Eastern Kingdoms, I just got killed. And being that I was terrible at that time, it was constant. So as time went on, I started venturing out into the Eastern Kingdoms more and started looking around. And once I got to Deadwind Pass, I was like, oh man, this place looks cool. It's got a raid and, you know, it seems pretty neat. But then there's that Duskwood's right there. Perfect place to just harass Alliance players and then run into the woods. It's actually like the trolliest place that I learned to play the game, really, and like actually dip a toe into PvP. So that's why it's kind of stuck for me, because even now when I'm leveling, I'll run back there and just fuck with people because I mean it works. So I mean it's actually not like a lore significance or anything. I mean, Lord knows that's true. They pretty much forgot that Medivh even exists. And anytime they bring in Khadgar, they just kind of meme them a little bit and then move on. I would say it's more or less just for the PvP lulz. That and with explosive trap, you just knock people into the ravine and then they die. So, you know, environmental kills are always nice. What about the game has kept you playing? Like, dude, asking that question, I feel like a lot of people don't ask themselves that question. But like, you know, being from fighting games, like there's no hard cap on your skill with a character. Like there's the matchups, there's tricks, frame traps. There's so many things you can learn. And to a degree that it exists in WoW too. Like whether people like it or not, everyone's got their combos with their characters. Like obviously in PvE you've got rotations, but when it comes to PvP, it's a lot more dynamic. You got to work out, you know, how you're going to use your abilities, in which manner, how can you set up using certain abilities. And that's actually the biggest thing that's kept me going. Like, again, we just talked about explosive trap. I will always spam the shit out of explosive trap. Like, I love standing at the top of a hill, throwing a tar trap at the bottom. When somebody walks through the tar trap, they slow themselves, they get to the top of the hill, I explosive them back into the tar trap. It's just rinse and repeat or aim shots. So that's actually like the biggest thing that has kind of kept me going. PvP is the lifeblood of the game, whether or not people want to admit it. Too bad that they don't push world PvP more. That's my biggest gripe. I actually wish that there was like some kind of rewards tied to it. But I mean, that's Blizzard's problem, not mine.
Honestly, I think PvP is the thing that keeps me around the most. Like dungeons are cool, but they're not the same as like Cataclysm dungeons. Cataclysm dungeons were like a raid unto themselves. They were fucking awesome. So at this day and age, it's pretty much just like Battlegrounds. That's really the only thing that keeps me around because they're the most dynamic gameplay. I mean, I have a whole TikTok about it, so, you know, I kind of dig them. But if Blizzard could add something to make WoW more enjoyable for me, I would say it'd be like kind of like a co-op Battleground queue. So like you and theoretically 19 other buddies can just queue into Battleground skirmishes. I know that's like what randoms are supposed to be, but just so people can theory craft like compositions and stuff, so you can play unranked rated battlegrounds more or less. I think that would be pretty neat. Or even if you could just like pug it and just kind of look for groups and just say like, hey, let's just play some kind of structured game. I think that would probably be the best thing, especially without like any negative consequences. I think that's the biggest thing. There's too much going on with rated. Like no one wants to risk their precious MMR, so I think a harmless version of rated battlegrounds would be cool. Yeah, so the reason that I started doing everything is I actually used to be in the army and used to actually like help with the war planning and shit. When I got out, it was something that was so second nature to me that as I was playing Battlegrounds, I was kind of doing it there. So that's why I started my channel and started doing everything that I started doing there, because I wanted to explain it from like the actual military mindset, which is why I talk about like geography and your opponent's philosophies and stuff like that. So that's like really my whole bread and butter when it comes to Battlegrounds. I'm always thinking of it in the sense of an actual war as opposed to just being a game, which like obviously it is, it's just a game and I'm not concerned about it like it's Alliance versus Horde all day, but it's just, it helps to have the upper knowledge of knowing how people actually win wars and that kind of stuff. People get like really people always think that I'm super cool. Like my wife used to think that I was a spy for the longest time because when she met me, I was still an interrogator. She was like, "Oh wow, you're like super spy," and I was like, "Nah, dude, I just do a lot of paperwork." And like we've been together for 6 years now, and now she's like, "Oh yeah, you're just a fucking desk jockey." Like she's like, "Yeah, bro, you just work for the CIA and shit." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, but sure, just a lot of paperwork. Not that cool. No one's doing Dragonborn shit." I really dig Gaslow's whole energy. That dude is awesome. I actually used to main him in Heroes of the Storm before they decided to slay that game. So I really fell in love with him there. And it's actually too bad you can't get a trucker hat, because that should have been like the Goblin Heritage armor. Just a trucker hat, some greasy overalls, and call it a day. That would probably be the only lore character that I can say like I really vibe with. Like Thrall's too much of a green Jesus. I guess Lorthamar. I like him. He's pretty cool. That dude's a super Chad. But elsewise, I don't really care for the lore characters too much. Sylvanas is not cool. And Garrosh, I guess, was the last Chad, but he's dead. So, yeah, here we are. Gazlow it is. I think the best questline that I've played recently... have you done the Sit a While and Listen quest over at the Ruby Pools? That is probably one of the best quests I've done in quite a while. Like, it's just simple lore. Super cool, sets the tone of the Dragon Isles in a site that you don't really get to see because Velistraz is telling you about the past. And then him just talking about how he loved a black dragon, but he can't remember her name, even though he killed her. Like, oh my god, crazy quest. Real good for just sitting there and talking to an old man. Elsewise, I think another cool quest. You remember the Mist of Pandaria like PvP campaign that they had against like at the beach? Like that one was probably one of my favorite like daily events that I got tied up in. I was all about it because the Wyvern mount at the time was insane. I got it like the moment I could. I grinded so many hours of just PvPing on that stupid beach. I refused to go back to Pandaria just because of that event. I mean, that would probably be like my top contentions for quests right now. But achievement-wise, I camped out Gondria, the spirit beast, back in the day when it was content. So this had to be like 2009-ish, I think. But I remember I stayed up for like 3 days straight, just camping out the spawn in Zuldrak, fighting people off so that I could catch the cat when he spawned. It was wild. That was a wild time. But, I mean, that was just kind of the shit you had to do back in the day on a PvP server. It was cutthroat. Also, until recently, I was never much of like a pet battle person, and I'm still not. But my wife doesn't play WoW at all, but whenever she does come in and decide that she wants to hop on the game, all she does is summon a pet mouse and then just walk around the world and show me like nice landscapes, and says that she's showing it to our video game son Mouse. So I guess catching the mouse was pretty neat. Yeah, she was like, I'm negatively interested in this game, but the mouse is the best pet in the game. And I was like, okay, sure. Well, I mean, the game's gotten smoother. Like, that there's no two ways about that. The art team stays impeccable. Everything about the game looks good. It's mainly the gameplay that I think a lot of people have problems with, which even then, the gameplay is significantly smoother, so much faster, which probably is what makes PvE and PvP like comparatively better than what it used to be. Admittedly, the talent systems over the past couple expansions have been a little limiting. So there's not as much diversity, I guess, to the game. How do I quantify that? Like Cataclysm, you had the advent of the new talent system, and that kind of stuck people into playing like 1 to 2 builds on average based on your spec. If you look at like Wrath of the Lich King and prior, pretty much all 3 expansions had a multitude of playstyles for each spec. And that could range between a bunch of shit, but whether or not it was actually good or not. But even so, you had the availability to do it. Like Shakadins were around at the time, and they don't necessarily exist the way that they did, where they were actually competitive as a damage dealer. But I think that's the biggest thing that I would say has changed. Like it's gotten prettier, but it has lost some depth. But with the new talent system, it seems like it's kind of coming back. So I mean, the reinvention of community's independence to do whatever they want gameplay wise is nice. Elsewise, I mean, yeah, not really too much has changed in the grand scheme of things when you really look at it. Like the community's still pretty regimented on parsing and being the top contenders for pretty much everything. So elsewise, I mean, it's pretty much the same game. It's just got some new face paint and a new way to play, more or less. But elsewise, I can't really say it's all changed too much. That's kind of what my whole purpose is right now. Like, I just want people to feel like they have the availability to play however it is they want. Those of us who are still playing, obviously, we are still here for a reason, and that's because, for better or worse, the game is adding new stuff to it, and I think that's really what keeps everybody playing. Again, dragon riding is probably the best thing that's happened to this game in quite a long while. It's just fun. That's really it. If you guys are interested in seeing more of like what I actually do, content-wise, you can check out my TikTok, Stagnant Nachos. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. Oh, actually, you know what? I do have a funny story if you want to hear it. Monday at like, I wish I was lying, like 4:45, like right before the expansion launched. Everybody was like waiting for the Storm Elemental because people were still trying to get the trinket, or the heirloom trinket. So people were still trying to get it, and the time was down to like 3 minutes or some shit, and we still had to summon the Storm Elemental, but we had already killed him like 3 or 4 times, and he didn't drop the piece people needed. So people are just spawn camping him, waiting for him to come up, kill the mobs, and then get the shield down. There's not enough time. So everyone's just like, pop all your cooldowns. Everyone starts blowing their load, trying to nuke the boss down as quickly as possible. We end up doing it with like 10 seconds left on the clock. But then some stroke of luck and act of God ends up happening, which I'm going to say is Blizzard. They reset the countdown and then brought back the Storm Ellie again so people could try it again. Most of the people who killed on that last attempt, we didn't get it, but it was like one of those times where you actually felt like you were playing World of Warcraft. Like the world was all there. We were all common-minded and trying to achieve a goal, even if it's something as stupid as getting an heirloom trinket that's not even going to be relevant this expansion. But it's that kind of stuff. The world element is what made World of Warcraft so fun. And I feel like, I know some people might flag me for saying this, but I feel like major cities do a lot of harm to the game because people are just left sitting in those cities unincentivized to go out into the world and explore. And that's where most of everybody's like best experiences in the game originally come from. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody's had that opportunity where they went out into like Arathi Highlands and ran into the opposite faction and then get into this epic conflict like it's the old Warcraft days. That kind of stuff, I think, is what Blizzard needs to focus on bringing back and incentivizing people to actually do it. I think dragon riding's a step in that direction, but we'll have to see once everybody actually gets to like the hub cities and starts raiding and shit. Things usually fall apart at that point. Shadowlands felt that way when it started, and then everybody ended up sitting in the circle of death known as Ouroboros. But yeah, that's really my long-winded piece on that.